Jumpin In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. And here we are again. It is, of course, Jumping In on a Friday evening. It is the very best in modern and contemporary jazz from around the globe with myself, H.
And me, Chris. Yes, welcome along to this week's show. And as autumn shows its hand early in a week where we've had virtually every type of weather, ensuring that whatever your wardrobe threw on you this morning was likely to be wrong by the time you got home in the evening. And it is a weekend, and a jazzy weekend it is too, with the Port Erin Jazz Festival kicking off tonight with a sold-out event. Drummer John Coughlan's Quo reimagined as a piano trio with the talented Alex Steele on piano and bassist Paul Jeffries, supported by our very own Blue Train Big Band in what promises to be a swinging event, followed on Saturday by the Harvey O'Higgins project, making a welcome return to the island. You may remember that we caught it with them last year, and they're supported by Milner's Tower, aka Blue Vannon. Tickets selling fast, so check out the Erin Arts Centre website for details. So H, what's blown you away this week other than chasing your garden furniture across the farmer's field carried on a 60-knot Zephyr? And what's been swinging? Other than the garden furniture now, but tree since the wind changed direction.
You say they're selling fast. You know, I'm afraid one of them, at least, if not both, are sold out.
Both now.
You certainly won't get into Coughlin.
John Coughlan sold out.
Yeah. Very, very popular indeed. Yeah, shame I can't get down there myself this year, but never mind. What are we looking at? There's a fascinating new one from Danielson, Payola and Paracelli, our own John Paracelli, on Act coming out later this month. We'll have a little check on that. The wonderful American saxist Caleb Wheeler Curtis has got a new double album out. Yeah, count them, 1, 2, and we'll be remembering the great drummer Michael De Pasqua.
And from me, we fell. We can still do it with one hand behind our back. Behave yourself. We're delusional, nothing new there. And to get the show on the road, he's Etienne Charles Creole Orchestra with Holy City. Holy City from trumpeter Etienne, Charles' debut big band release, Creole Orchestra. He's already got some 10 albums under his name as a leader and many, many more as a sideman, but this is his first outing with his own writing for Large Ensemble. And Large Ensemble it is, with some 22 members. Vocalist Renee Marie makes guest appearances on 4 tracks, and it was while working with her on her last album that Charles was asked could he write big band charts to take on the road. It was a baptism by fire, he says, who thought, OK, now I'm a big band writer. And big band writer he appears to be, with plenty of detail and intricacies in the scoring of all the parts. The album was 4 weeks at the top of the USA Jazz Weekly chart, and the track we heard solos from John Ellis on sax, Alex Wintz on guitar, and Etienne himself on trumpet. And Creole Orchestra is available now.
Good sounding stuff and a great way to get going. Jazz and beer, well, that's maybe the link you think of in the British Isles anyway. I was going to say the Isle of Man, yeah, maybe, definitely. And Britain throughout, yeah, probably.
Brussels for sure.
Brussels, definitely, yes, and that neck of the woods. But of course, in large parts of the continent, jazz and wine are a happy mix. And that is the case with the latest from ACT, or one of their latest anyway, just called simply Trio, Edition Palmer 2. And this is Chateau Palmer. Lars Danielson, Veneri Piola, and John Paracelli. And it's recorded, yes, you've guessed it, not in a studio, but the wood-panelled salon in a secluded corner of this lovely Bordeaux wine region. The second collaboration between ACT Music and Chateau Palmer brings together Lars Danielson with longtime collaborator John Paracelli and the brilliant Finnish trumpeter Veneri Piola. We're great fans of his. His stuff in his own name is brilliant, really, really inventive. An album, like I said, just called Trio, a really light sound, some wonderfully balanced acoustics, the music almost like the wine itself. Have a listen to Playing with the Groove. Interesting stuff. They're all pretty short tracks by and large on the album, all beautifully balanced as it suggests in the liner notes. They're recorded in late May, early June of this year. And as it says, another set of artisans were hard at work just outside where the musicians were playing, with the grapes, of course, were beginning to take shape and the flowers were appearing. And yeah, it's a really beautifully simplistic album in many ways. I'm loving that sort of link with I'd love to go and see some jazz in. You do see it, and I've been around Bordeaux where I've seen jazz advertised. Sadly, I haven't had a chance to actually go to one of the gigs, but I see they do have some concerts, some festivals around Bordeaux in some of the wine areas. A lovely link up with going in some of these beautiful chateaux, great places to play, beautiful surroundings, you can imagine. Nice glass of wine as well, listening to a trio like that. Much more of them. In fact, that's probably one of the pokier numbers on the album. It must be said, a lot more laid-back sounds, some quite sort of a Cuban or sort of a Latin American sounds as well, I think, in many ways. Veneri staying a lot to muted bells on his horns on that one, either trumpets or flugelhorn. And our own John Paracelli still going strong. It's amazing, he's been going for so long now and played in so many different arenas. He'd be a fascinating man to talk to at some stage. And they say in the notes, the crafted songs not only champion the spirit of collaboration but paid tribute to their French hosts as well. The result is a celebration of the senses in much the same way as a tasting at Chateau Palmer is. You can see what they're doing here, a bit of joint marketing going on. Enjoy the jazz, buy the album, buy the album, buy the wine. Not a bad idea at all. What's not to like, as I say? Lars Danielsson, Veneri Piola, John Paracelli Trio. It is on Act, and it will be coming out on the 1st of November.
Yes, interestingly enough, of course, John Paracelli's played with Lars in Libretto over several albums, and we caught them live at London Jazz Festival a couple of years ago.
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah,
very good set indeed. Next from me, let's get a little funky with one of the latest releases on the wonderful Smoke Sessions label. Noted for always having swinging releases, the label has a format of booking the artist or band for a few nights at their New York Smoke Jazz Club, then they give them all a day off, and then the next day they're in the studio recording, and it certainly works for me. Here in their 17th album, but their first in 7 years, this is Chainsaw from the album Big George from One for All. Chainsaw, a wonderfully swinging track based around a two-chord riff, not unlike So What. The album called Big George because the group are joined by George Coleman on 3 tracks, but not on that one. Vinyl lovers get 3 tracks per side, one side from the group by themselves, and side 2 with Mr. Coleman. However, digital downloads and CDs get an extra 3 track, and be assured they're not fillers. Now, given the quality of the musicians in All for One, or rather One for All, tenor man Eric Alexander, trumpeter Jim Rotondi, trombonist Steve Davis, pianist David Heseltine, bassist John Webber, and drummer Joe Farnsworth, the tracks with the group not only don't disappoint, as they're all leaders in their own right, but there's an obvious sense of pleasure for the band when they play with who they describe as their number one mentor. The album is called Big George, and it's out now.
You are listening to Jumpin In with Chris and myself, H. The best in modern and contemporary jazz here on Mike's Radio every other Friday evening. And in between, of course, it's our sister programme with myself, H. Sweet and Swing, which, if you like your jazz a little earlier, will be the one for you, or both, hopefully. Lots of Joe Loss, Geraldo, Ambrose, swing, nostalgia, big band, and et al., as they say. For now, I'm going back not that far, but I am going back worryingly 42 years. 1982, a wonderful album brought out under the name, or at least under Eberhard Weber's name, called Later That Evening, featuring Paul McCandless, Michael de Pasqua, Bill Frisell and Lyle Mays. And I'm playing it simply because, you do go back to some of these favourite tracks. We know Eberhard sadly had a stroke, still with us, but hasn't really been playing for quite a few years now. Paul McCandless, still think active on the scene. Bill Frisell, busy as ever, even though he's, again, not getting any younger like the rest of us. Lyle Mays sadly left us far too young. And Michael de Pasqua, I knew he'd left the business and that he left, amazingly, having had a really successful career as playing with Chico Hamilton and all sorts of people from an early age. I'm saying Chico Hamilton, it's the wrong name, but he did start out early doors and then played famously, I think, with Jan Garbrick for a time and became quite a name on the ECM label round about the mid to late 1980s. Wonderfully subtle drummer. We saw him several times playing live with Jan. And then he left the business. He left music and went into, I think it was the family business in Florida, which I think was roofing or some sort of construction type business, which did very well. Played a little bit occasionally, but never really went back to professional drumming again. He came out of retirement for one album, I think. But then what I didn't know until I was reading something recently, that he actually died very young. I think, again, he had cancer and died a number of years ago, which is always a shock when you don't know it's happened. You think, oh, they're probably still active and doing something. Then you find, sadly, they're not. And all the reports say the same thing. He was just a really, really lovely guy, as well as being a fantastically inventive and lyrical jazz percussionist. Let's hear him on great track. It's called Mauritius. One of those albums from that golden age of ECM, or at least in our humble opinion. We were just saying, as listening to that, how we go back to those ones still on a regular basis, albeit they're 40 years old. And not to say there haven't been lots of classic ECMs since that time, but it just seems to be such a rich vein around then. There have been some classics coming out again, actually fairly recently. Who knows? If I was around in another 40 years, I might feel exactly the same about them. And of course, like all labels, there are a few albums that you think, well, that's all right, but they're sort of a little bit forgettable. That one certainly isn't, and that track most certainly isn't. Mauritius, Paul McCandless on oboe, or I think it might be clarinet there is. No, it's oboe. It is in fact oboe on that one. Bill Frisell sounding Frizellish as ever on guitar. He has always had that magic sound, so distinctive. Lyle Mays, the great late Lyle Mays on piano, Eberhard Weber on bass, still with us, but like I said, sadly no longer playing. And again, the reason for playing it, Michael de Pasqua on drums and percussion there, who sadly left us in 2016 after dropping out of the music scene a goodly number of years before that. And I think I said Chico Hamilton earlier on. Zoot Sims, I think, was the man I was thinking of, and Al Cohn and Jerry Mulligan he started out with before going on to be certainly a regular fixture on ECM in the 80s. Terrific player.
Including playing with Ralph Towner, of course. And yes, I think both Ralph Towner and Eberhard Weber's silent feet were introduced to me by John Peel, who used to play such a great variety of music on his programme in the day. Now, I don't know whether it's the cooler weather or something they're putting in the water, but there is no shortage of swinging releases around at the moment. This next one, Elias Haslinger meets Mike Saylors from saxophonist Haslinger and trumpeter Saylors, introduced them both as new names to me, although I have undoubtedly heard Haslinger before, as he took the lead tenor seat in Maynard Ferguson's band for many years. The two say they've been friends for 40 years and are just as likely to be talking about their family or the golf course as they are jazz when they're on the stand, but they have been stalwarts on the Texas jazz scene for over 20 years, and that closeness shows in their playing. Here's One Hand Clap. one hand clap, making a much better noise than when I tried it. From the recently released Elias Haslinger, and it's him, meets Mike Saylors. The album is on the Bandstand Presents label, who are an Austin, Texas-based company who promote, release and support all things jazz. And a great sounding band too. Elias Haslinger on sax, Mike Saylors on trumpet. The pair share the composing duties. Ryan Hagler on bass, Daniel Dufour at the drums. And on that track, the piano seat and that and one other was taken by Eddie Hobbizel, who also mixed and mastered the album with Andy Langham on piano for the remaining tracks.
Hi there, this is Binker Golding. You're listening to Jumping In on Manx Radio with your boys Chris and Age.
Great stuff, never less than fascinating player Caleb Wheeler-Curtis. Not perhaps a household name, but I'm sure he will become. He's getting a great reputation. I will quote our old mate Selwyn Harris from Jazzwise. Caleb's alto sax playing is intensely focused and garrulously inventive, digging deep into progressive bop through to post-Coltrane, ornette, free jazz and R&B funk traditions. Can't say any better than that, so to be honest with you. Saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist. It's a double album with the fascinating title of The True Story of Bears and the Invention of the Battery. Make of that what you will. By way of not really explaining it, Curtis says that the Coen brothers' Oscar-winning 1996 film Fargo opens with a disclaimer, "This is a true story." And he says, I love that narrative idea. There's something in the air right now about what exactly constitutes the truth. Fake news, we know it all. I also realise that music and the art that excite me are often bizarre, confusing or abstract. So the first half, it's a double album. First half is called Bears and the Invention of the Battery. The second, Raise 4 Monk, the Minimalist. Two separate trios. So we've just heard him with his standing trio of Sean Conley on bass, Michael Sarin at the drums. And then on the second album, it's, as it suggests, an exploration of Monk, of course, bassist Eric Rivas, drummer Justin Faulkner, long-time bandmates in the Branford Marsalis Quartet. Great stuff. Really enjoying that. Haven't had a chance to listen to the Thelonious Monk one yet, but I will do. So thanks very much to Anne Braithwaite for sending that one over, and it is out on the 1st of November.
Well, that's just about it for this show, but we have got time just about to slip in a track from the forthcoming release from pianist and keyboard player Aaron Parks' Little Big group, with the original name of Little Big 3. The lineup retains Greg Toohey on guitar, bassist David Ginyard Jr., but Yongkok Kim takes over on the drum seat from Tommy Crane, who was on volumes 1 and 2. The album hits the racks on the 18th of this month, although it can be pre-ordered now, and from it, here's Delusions, but be under no delusions. Jumpin' In will be back in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Bye for now.
Be good.